Plant fam! Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Jaclynn. This is my jungle, and if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. So today is day 2 of 12 days of Plantmas, and I am very excited to talk to you about one of my favorite plants in my collection, and that is the Anthurium pallidiflorum. So this is one of my favorite Anthurium just in my whole entire collection because I love a long strappy leaf. This one is velvety and I'm just totally obsessed with it. I bought this one when it was pretty small, and this is the most recent leaf that it has given me. I forgot to bring my measuring tape over here. I meant to measure it, but I know that it was definitely well past a foot, maybe even a foot and a half the last time I checked. So these are really, really cool, and I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of a deep dive into where these come from and how they grow. So this one is also called the pale flowered Anthurium. It is native to Ecuador and Colombian rainforests. So this is definitely one that enjoys a bit more humidity. I think it's really important when we're talking about plant care to understand where the plants come from, where do they naturally grow. That is going to give us a ton of insight on how to actually properly care for these. So this one was first discovered by botanist Thomas Crote in 1987 when he was on an expedition in Ecuador. He noted that this one was interesting because he was fascinated by the inflows on this being a more pale color and a little bit more spirally. So I actually didn't know that this one had more of a spiral inflow, maybe that it's been more cultivated, we just don't see it as much. I know that this one behind me, the Wenlingeri, is a similar type of Anthurium, more strappy but not velvet, that does have like a very curly inflow. So I don't know, I've never seen it, so I'm gonna have to pop in a picture of what the inflow looks like on this plant, because I mean, if you saw this just hanging out in a rainforest out in nature, I feel like you would think it was pretty cool too. It's really unique in the way that it grows and the way that these leaves hang. So I looked into it a little bit and I found a lot of different information about how big these leaves can actually get. So at first it said up to 3 feet, and I was like, that's kind of impressive, but like not that long. I mean, this one's over a foot already, which is impressive, but I mean, I guess triple the size would be super impressive for sure. But I found somebody on Reddit who actually clocked theirs at like well above 5 feet. And I just think it's really fascinating to see that in optimal conditions for these plants, you can absolutely grow them much larger than what we would maybe see in nature, because we can kind of create more ideal perfect conditions in our home than what is out in nature. Nature's pretty harsh sometimes, you guys. So I think it's really interesting what we're able to do with this plant when we're growing it indoors. But how do we grow this indoors in the most optimal environment so that we can get those big, long leaves? So lighting on this one, honestly, I give it the same amount of light as all of my Anthurium, which is bright and direct light. Anthurium, for the most part, you can give them a little bit less light than your other aroids, especially if you want the leaves to stay nice and dark, like some of the ones that I have behind me here. So personally, what I use are Soltech lights on this one because this lives on the shelf just up here out of frame a little bit, but hopefully as it gets longer, you guys will see it more. And this is obviously doing very well in that spot. This leaf was already damaged when it came to me, so those are older. I know they're funky looking, but I don't want to cut them off because the plant is still using them. These are the newer ones that have come out in my care, and as you can see, they keep getting bigger and bigger, or longer rather. So bright indirect light for this one has been doing really, really well. And I really love Barina. If you guys are looking for just easy, affordable lights, the Barina T5s are really great for Anthurium in my personal opinion. It's nice, soft light. It's not too harsh. So I can leave those linked down below for you guys. Of course, I also recommend Soltech if you can manage to get yourself some, if you're looking for a more aesthetically pleasing grow light for your space. Those are definitely the way to go, but they are a little bit more pricey. So if you're looking for just under shelf lighting, the Barina T5s are going to be a great way to grow these if you're looking for just like cabinet lights, things along those lines. So definitely keep in mind where these grow. These are not growing out in direct sunlight and nature for the most part. These are going to be on trees, growing underneath in more shaded areas. So water on these ones, let me tell you, I think that these are very tolerant in my opinion. This has been a super easy grower for me. I water it at the same pace that I water most of my Anthurium, which is at least once a week. If it's really warm in here, sometimes sooner than that, but no more than every 5 days. And honestly, she's done so good for me. No cosmetic damage, no issues coming out whatsoever on this one with watering it once a week. So obviously that's going to depend on very many factors. So it's kind of up to you to determine how long your plant is staying wet and how long it's staying dry for. You definitely don't want to let these dry out for too long, but I have found that if this guy dries out between waterings, it's fine. Like, it's not that serious. But that could be because I do have a little bit higher humidity in this space. So this is my plant room. Hi, welcome to my plant room if you're new here. And ambient in here stays around 60% without any supplemental humidifier. If I have the humidifier going in here without the window open for airflow, it gets so humid in here so fast that it actually sets off the fire alarms. So it stays really nice in here on its own. So I think that that also probably helps this guy since it does come from the rainforest. You have to keep in mind the climate that it's growing in naturally is going to be more moist, for lack of a better term, because I know that word makes some people uncomfortable for some reason, but there is no other word to really describe moisture. So humidity is moisture in the air, and the leaves can actually take up some of that moisture. The plant can take up moisture from its environment. So I feel like that extra humidity for this is definitely helping the watering routine. So if you're a little bit more on the underwatering side, if you have higher humidity, your plants are going to suffer less, if that makes sense. So since this one is a little bit more of a velvety leaf Anthurium, that usually means that they do like a bit more humidity. However, like I said, I maintain around 60% in here. So keep that in mind, that information. Everybody's environment is going to be different, but I do think that if I wanted to put this out in the living room, that it might be fine. It might not grow as quickly or as big, but I think that it would be fine if this is something that you wanted to test out growing in more ambient humidity, which tends to be less than 60% for most people's homes. Like, the temperature and humidity difference in here is significant compared to the rest of my apartment. So we've made our own little like greenhouse in here without really needing anything extra. So yeah, watering, like I said, I water it when it's dry, and sometimes I forget. She's pretty dry right now. She's got crazy roots that are definitely ready for an up pot, but she's still sizing up regardless, even in this tiny little nursery pot that I have not upgraded since getting her. She's got tons of roots. So in my experience, she's been very drought tolerant. So if you're an underwaterer like me, this is a great plant for your collection. If you're not into like the heartleaf Anthurium, I feel like this is a really great alternative if you are more of like a philodendron person. It's definitely the vibe. So I love a long strappy leaf regardless of the genus. The only philodendron that I really have left in my collection are ones that display these types of characteristics. So yeah, I don't think watering is all that complicated on this one. It definitely doesn't want to sit wet for extended periods of time either. So you kind of have to find a balance. It's impossible for me to tell you water it every 4 days, water it every 6 days, however many days, because I don't know what you have it in. I don't know your environment. I don't know if it's hot, if it's humid, if it's cold, if it's dry. Like, I can't say. So it's kind of up to you to figure out what this plant wants in terms of water. My experience has been she's super easygoing. Like, dry for days and doesn't even care. Like, she's been like this for days and she's fine. So, fertilizer is always going to be the same on Anthurium. They're pretty heavy feeders. I fertilize them every single time that I water. If you're curious about my fertilizer routine, I'll leave it linked for you to go and check out after this video. I talk about everything that I put in my water, but I will tell you now that fish shit and super growth elixir are like my top 2 must have in my water every single time I water my plants. And then I also use the super growth elixir spray on the foliage. I know some people are weird about foliage feeding their aeroids, but I promise you they love it. It's such a fine mist. It dries very quickly. It's not going to cause fungal problems or anything like that on your plants. I spray my Anthurium foliar once a week along with all the rest of my plants in my collection, and I notice a growth difference between when I'm using it consistently and when I'm not. So 10 out of 10 recommend both of those products. Fish Shit, Super Growth Elixir. Go and snag them. I'll leave them down below. They are not fertilizers, but they are going to be great supplements for your plants to get them those extra nutrients that they need, all the good bacteria that the roots need, and stuff like that. So it does have kelp, but it's not your like traditional NPK. So you want to make sure you're still doing that as well and not forgetting to do that. But these are ones that are safe to use as much as you want on your plants. It's never going to harm them. So I know some people get weird about fertilizing. It was something that I was afraid of for a long time, but I'm telling you, these products cannot harm your plant no matter how much you put on them or in them. So definitely check them out if you haven't yet. And then soil, you guys, for these. Honestly, this has been in just like a regular soil mix. Not a very good one. Looks like there might even be some moss still on the roots, and she's fine, but all of my Anthurium go into a semi-chunky mix. Again, I use Fox Farms, I use Mother Earth, Perlite number 3, and I use Orchiada, I think is the name. Pieces of orchid bark that are smaller, so they're just a little bit more fine to make a little bit less of a chunky mix, but still have the roots be nice and aerated. Anthurium roots are very thick, very robust. They're very, very prominent. Look at them. Very vigorous, especially if you're giving them the fish shit. They just need to have a little bit of aeration. You don't need as much because most Anthurium do like to stay more on the moist side. They don't like to be dry as much as, say, Hoya. So I do a little bit less of a chunky mix on these ones. I use smaller pieces of bark, and maybe I'll just use a little bit less of it, because if you use too chunky of a mix on your Anthurium, you're gonna be watering them like every day. So don't do that. But a lot of people do semi-hydro and stuff like that. It's not for me, but if that works for you, just make sure you're still feeding them properly and you do you, boo-boo. And I would say that propagating them is easy, but you guys, I haven't propagated an Anthurium yet, but I have one that needs to be chopped, and we're definitely going to document it, and we're definitely going to talk about it. So I want to say that they're easy to propagate because I've never had an issue growing them, like, just period. So I feel like they should be easy to propagate, but I've never propagated it before. So let me know in the comments below if you've ever propagated this plant and how you did it and whether or not you thought it was easy. So that's really it, you guys. That's the Anthurium pallidiflorum. Let me know in the comments below if you have this one. Do you have a similar one? I also have lots of other strappy Anthurium that I'm happy to do like a compare and contrast video, but I'm not gonna lie to you, this one is my favorite. If I could only have one long leaf strappy boy Anthurium, it's this one. I'm gonna choose this one every single time. I love these leaves. So that is it, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it informative. Again, I'm just sharing what I do and what I've found successful for me in growing this plant. My word is not like the law or the rule or anything like that. I'm just sharing my experience with you. So give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the rest of 12 days of Plantmas. And I hope you guys are having a beautiful day. And I hope I see you again tomorrow for the next one.